in doing some cutting edge work. With layers of innovation and cognitive automation built in, today what the centers are driving are absolutely at the core of business processes and problems that they are solving for the parent organizations. Unleashing the power of what technology has to offer, leveraging the rich talent demographic dividend that India brings to the bear, one is really looking at this commercially leveraged model, truly innovating to drive top line growth, to drive innovation at a very different level. Joining us today, we have some eminent speakers, folks who have actually led global capability centers, innovated and set up these models from scratch. They're absolutely at the core of driving where that future of service delivery is heading towards. We're going to talk about aspects of the operating model and how those have changed over the years. In today's world of Industry 4.0 and digitalization that's being driven across the business value chain, how and what more can these centers deliver for the international players? We're going to talk a little about what the last 8 months of COVID have meant. Has it been a boon or a bane? How have these organizations and the GCCs leveraged the opportunity before them, accelerated the digital technology transformation, and truly delivered business impact? We're going to also touch upon softer aspects of what the workforce of the future means. How prepared are we for that? And last, not the least, we certainly will talk about what are the risks that one needs to watch out for. So stay clued in as we log into this session today and get started taking you through this journey of evolution and what the business impact is going to mean for the world of tomorrow. And with that, let me very quickly introduce my panel members who are going to join me here today. We have Gautam Gulati, who is the head of the IT Center for Schlumberger set up in Pune. Gautam has been with the organization for over many years, and today is at the helm of managing 60% of Schlumberger's IT workforce that is working under his stewardship. We're joined by Sudhir Banerjee, who's a senior VP and head of the global business services set up by ABB. Sudhir, in his prior roles, has also worked in establishing shared services for General Electric and Honeywell, and from scratch to taking them to large setups today. He has vast experience in the space of global business operations, process engineering, Six Sigma, and so on and so forth, and you will get to hear a lot from him this evening. We're also joined by Pankaj Srivastava, who heads the engineering team at GE Steam Power, located in Noida. A long timer at General Electric, has actually set up capability centers in India for GE Industrial and several other GE entities. We are joined by Marnix Boersma, who is a partner with KPMG in our Netherlands office, focused on the oil and gas space, bringing years of experience, and will bring in a very interesting perspective from an outside-in standpoint, from a consultant's lens, as well as he's someone who joined KPMG after years at Shell. So someone who's been focused on both upstream and the LNG business across many parts of Shell's business across the world. So like you can see, friends, we have a very eminent panel with vast experience representing various organizations, and we're looking forward to an engaging discussion, especially in today's changing times, which will allow you to have several interesting takeaways and areas to think about and chew upon. With that, I would like to get started, and I'm going to be facilitating this session today, really kind of getting our panelists to share some of their experiences by talking about a few very specific aspects of what we think you will enjoy listening to. To get us started, I cannot help but talk about what we're seeing in this changing landscape and over the last few months. So I'm going to encourage and request Gautam to share some of his views and bringing all of his experience to bear, looking at how the global organization is looking at the GCC model. How do parent organizations of large setups like this really view this model? And what has changed in that regard, Gautam?
Shalini, first of all, thank you to you and KPMG for having me on this panel. I'm looking forward to this conversation and hearing Pankaj, Sudhir, and Manik share their views. If I can share Schlumberger's situation, right? One, if I look at the overall business situation, the oil and gas industry has been in a transition for the last 2 years. As many of you are aware that it has come under various pressures, supply.
To you, I mean, similarly, to get your perspectives,
Yeah.
Again, conscious of the forum, others are looking across wider global service delivery thereof, not just about the transaction.
On the move, and I think we'll be surprised by what the industry looks like in 10 years. I think it will be hard to fathom. I think the progress will be very impressive.
Absolutely, and in fact, thanks for that. I have, I'm not a hardcore sector person myself, but have had the chance to see some of what these digital twins look like and what is
Yes.
getting built out of Bangalore, and it's fascinating how without having to go all out into the rig, one can monitor and control a bunch of things. So it's a fascinating world, and would love to invite Sudhir, Pankaj, and Gautam to also comment on this because it's so core to your business. Sudhir, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so maybe, yeah, I will take. So again, I will go by the fundamentals. What is going on is one is the cost to serve, right? If you look at all the industry we are talking about, the margin is which one time used to be quite a heavy one is shrinking. Huh? And then this whole thing of predictable service is a big thing. It can be as simple as a homeowner that if your dishwasher is not working and it has to be repaired, do you have a pre-signal? So I think it's all about predictability and reliability, right? Yeah. And this whole moment of truth between the engineer and the system has to be, zero error. If suppose these are the 3 or 4 fundamentals on which the 4.0 has to be defined, then the GCC has a fantastic role to play.
Yeah.
So, and again, I'm not getting into the safety security part of it, but I'm just taking you a very live example. We have plants across the world, and you have a simple handheld equipment, which even not a senior engineer, a field staff is keeping in his pocket. It is your iPhone or a simple phone.
Yeah.
And when he or she comes across a leakage on the plant or some kind of a heat zone,
yeah,
and she doesn't know whether there's a problem.
Yeah.
Just click of a button, the data reaches a central control team, which can be from a Kazakhstan oil field, from a Thai oil field, from an Indian Ocean, all across.
Yeah.
Now think of if that predictability has to be defined before 4.0 kind of a system, someone would have taken a flight to reach to that point and would have not even understood. Now that is a kind of ecosystem we are now setting, and it is not an ABB situation, it's across the world, right?
Yeah.
You will be surprised. Indian Railways, and I am taking to very near to our heart.
Yeah.
We installed some of the equipments, and one of the setup which is working is that the person who's the attendant of your night train cabin has a equipment where he or she can connect to that information to a central team which manages all these tracks. So I'm just going into a fundamental that if you look at the moment of truth is no more defined by an engineer.
Yeah.
Moment of truth has been now given to the user group, and there's a subject matter experts who are the costly resources who are doing the real value-added analytics.
Absolutely, yeah, and there could be better examples to see the shift in where this model started to a completely value-driven model today.
One thing I think I'm linking back to Marmik's and all our panelists' point. I think the world future is much more simpler than the world we were representing 20 years back.
Yeah.
And I think that brings another very important opportunity is to how do we really bring the manufacturing or a physical world and a service industry like GCC, what we have been creating, closer to each other. So I think that we don't need to make these two tracks run parallel. Somewhere there is a merger which we can create. And I think that's the important ownership leadership has to bring.
Absolutely, and we're going to touch upon that. But while on the theme of of the whole digital transformation. Pankaj would love to hear some of your views on the subject.
Yeah, so what Sudhir said, right? Availability and the reliability of our plant is the most important.
Yeah.
Right? Now to make sure that there is a continuous production and supply of the electricity. And conventionally, I'll give you example. Conventionally, as G Steam Power, we do multi-year agreements where we do we plan and manage the outages, inspection for our boilers, turbine generators, and this helps us to give the parts, novel parts to the customers, do all kind of repairs and upgrades, right? And so this has been the traditional model, right? With the now digital twins of the power plant and having the lifing models, and then having the already inspection data which is available, we are able to now detect any anomaly much before before really there would be any issue, right? So this is helping us to really leveraging the digital technology where we are able to access the data, using that data, predicting it, and ensuring the availability and the reliability of the plant. And this is saving, like, when it comes to the, in terms of savings, this is like, this gives a lot of saving in terms of, if I would say, like, for a typical plant in India, if we do this, it would give like crores of saving, right? Just by doing this simple risk-based inspection instead of just doing the normal inspection what we do. So this is just an example. Similar,
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you, Pankaj, and clearly, cost is one dimension of it. In terms of the other benefits of predicting some of this before it even hits you, there's immense value in some of that. So some great points there. And Gautam, to kind of close the loop on that subject, if you could touch upon how you see this transformation, and also help get into the subject of what will it take to sustain such innovation in the GCC environment. Because there's stuff that's happened and there's a lot that's ongoing and a lot more to be done, and not easy to actually sustain innovation. Yeah. So if you could touch upon both this whole industry 4.0 driven transformation and sustaining the same, would love to hear your views on that.
So let's just take a little bit, the journey of, in a way, IT, and not just the GCCs, but across. Right. So first it started with support. Then we went into doing projects and doing complete builds and implementations and rollouts, etc. Right? And what I now see a trend that is clearly it's kind of supplementing and complementing what Sudhir and Pankaj said, and to some extent Marnix as well, is that now we are moving to more and more of real-time monitoring, right? To what Sudhir said. Yeah. Right? For example, we, until last year, were not doing monitoring. Now we are actually doing monitoring of frac pumps all around the world, right? And as you know, fracturing is a big part of the oil and gas business. And we are doing now monitoring. That's where you start now collecting data, and then you start being able to do all your predictive stuff and all that, right? Now, if you were to look at this and you look at just the growth of data centers in India, right? Why have we suddenly seen in the last 3 years Microsoft putting in more data centers? Just day before yesterday or earlier this week was Reliance Jio wanting to set up data centers, right? Which tells you that they are now seeing very clearly where the industry, GCCs, service integrators, service companies are all headed into providing the real-time facilitation of business decisions. And I think that's where really the industry is moving now. So I think I probably just complimented what everybody's already said.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, the next part of your question, I think in terms of innovation, I think we need to do a lot more than what we've been doing, very clearly, right? There's been a spurt of startup activity, startups. There's been far more engagement of the GCCs and with the startups, accelerators. NASCOM has been doing stuff, etc., to facilitate this.
Yeah.
But I think this again needs another, probably a harder push. I think where we really need to go faster is our collaboration with academia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Applied research, funding research programs, which I think is where today, honestly, something which I want personally trying to pursue, right? In a very small way, looking at partnerships with one of the leading engineering colleges in Pune, because I think that's essential to us being a little bit more innovative than what we've been able to be for business impact. We are innovative when it comes to improving our processes, right? Releasing code faster, automation, test automation. But what about innovation for business impact?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's really the next frontier, if you ask me. And I can see Sudhir nodding his head and Pankaj as well. So it'd be good to hear their views on this topic. So I'll shut up.
No, but thank you for that, Gautam. So well said, because really, you say innovation for business impact, which is really that delta level of, as opposed to small incremental changes one is driving, very, very pertinent. And in fact, it brings us to this whole theme of, which has been very much at the heart of it, technology having driven the evolution. But when you look at what is really enabling it, it's the workforce and the workforce of the future. And it's a topic that I'd love for us to spend a little time about. And I'm going to go back to Pankaj to kind of talk a little about, when you look at this workforce, firstly, how ready do you think it is for that future? If you believe there have been some significant changes over the last 8 months, and if we've learned a few things, if this whole work from home or location agnostic model has taught us a few things, what are those? So how ready is our workforce for the future, and what are your views on that, Pankaj?
Yeah, I think we have seen a big change, right? The way we work in the last 8 to 9 months. I think all of us have experienced this. I think there has been a change in the mindset, right? Sometime before, we didn't really believe that, almost 90 to 100% of the workforce or, all of our employees, colleagues can work from home. I think we are learning in this process. I think we all are part of this journey where we believe there are better ways to collaborate. There has to be a better IT enabled systems to, help us. There has to be, overall, learning and training for all of our employees. How can they collaborate? Our people leaders, they also have to learn, right? How can they be a virtual people leader where really they won't be meeting their employees? And so I think this is a journey which I believe all the organizations are going through. And this is also helping our employees to, to also, spend more time on the work and the family, and not really spending, time in commuting to the office. I know I have worked in Bangalore where, some of the employees are more than 2 hours just are on road or to commute. So I think it is helping us to be more productive and helping us to be more creative. And then, obviously it's a journey. But I would say as a industry, as a global capability center, GCC, I think this is a learning for all of us. And I think we are going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pankaj. Agree with almost everything you said there. And Sudhir, I'm going to ask you to connect a few dots from the innovation theme that Gautam left at to some of what Pankaj referred to in terms of the changes. And you yourself spoke of we having come to a time where it's not about adding headcount and adding resources. So as you connect innovation to this work from home model, to then looking at our preparedness for the future, how would you think, how prepared is our workforce for tomorrow?
So Shalini, I think I will wait for our other panel members to reflect on this. But my take is, I think our workforce is much more informed. They are more keen to be purposefully engaged.
Yeah.
So if I really look at my days when we started, any assignment for me was good enough, so long as I'm gainfully employed for 8 hours per day or more.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
If I am pushed by my manager for more work hours, I feel that I am being loved by him. This new workforce is so well informed that the role of us as leaders, it's completely, my last few years of experience, and since I have a teenage daughter, she has just completed her master's and now entered into industry, I can relate with her much more. I think the purpose or the need for GCC leaders, and I'm referring to now the leadership layer, is not to push our previous version of the format to the new workforce. I think that's the biggest thing, biggest failure we will carve out. If we say that when I was in GE, when I was in Honeywell, when I was in ABB, when I was this, I used to do this.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't work.
True.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think the whole discussion of the leadership now need to change, and I will fully support what Gautam said. Am I doing this work for an outcome which is going to give an impact? If no, then take a pause. So I think this conversation of leadership and the workforce need to be not on the what part of it, but take a pause and just have a how discussion with them, because they are so innovative. If you give them that space, they may falter a little bit, but they will come back to the corrective piece faster. The role of us need to be that we enable them to search the information, and where the experience really comes. I'm going to touch upon another important topic which I alluded a few minutes back. If you really look at the service industry, to train a resource, whether he or she is in finance, procurement, HR, engineering, is few weeks. We can debate whether it's 6-7 weeks to 18 weeks to 20 weeks, but a good resource becomes workable within 20 weeks. But when you look at the manufacturing sector, since I worked in that sector, I could see it took 6 months for me to understand basics of machine engineering and workshop and welding, and how it takes 6 years. When you can talk parallel to parallel with at least your manager, that at least you know something. Now that is one of the biggest, I would say, opportunity which GCCs are sitting today, as to how discussion can be made faster, and not by dictating a terms of a previous model, but allowing that innovative discussions to happen.
I think we've all innovated. In fact, technology and platforms like this have allowed us to do so much. In fact, I'm going to take the liberty of running almost like a rapid fire as we come to the close of this session. And since we're all, in these windows next to one another, I'm going to, when we look at innovation that each of you are driving and witnessing and experiencing, if we had to picture an industry platform where GCCs could collaborate with one another, could actually learn from one another, bring innovation at another level. And if I had to open this up and ask you all for one idea each on where and why and how can GCCs come together and collaborate, when you look at some of the larger problems and challenges facing the sector, are there any thoughts that you all may have? And whoever wants to go first, just ideas, picture a GCC collaborative model, a platform where you can innovate and bring your experiences for the wider benefit of the sector at large. I'm just curious, and any thoughts there, anyone?
So Shalini, maybe I will pick few thoughts and then we'll add up to as a team together.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking of that. See, there has to be a need felt.
Yeah.
So we can all get into a room, but unless the need is not supported for a long-term sustenance, will not move. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the need which is really coming up now of late is how do we really rejuvenate the manufacturing sector?
Yeah.
I'm just building up. Maybe it will be a little bit abstract, but that's a good thing. Now, if you look at the GCC model, overall model, it's a very matured model, 20 plus years, like, Pankaj talking about GE started, American Express started,
Yeah.
Then we have transformed into different sub models of it. But net, it's a very matured model. Whether it is the transition playbook of you or the grooming of resources for that matter, etc. Having said that, I think I have not participated in any discussion where there is an industry hardcore manufacturing sector people in a hall together with a GCC leadership who are trying to muscle out what are those big failures each of the industry are facing. And now let me count what are those failures which I say. I think Gautam talked about, Pankaj talked about, Marnik talked about. The GCC is always starving from the industry knowledge because they are not in the industry, they are remote from the industry. So if I have to understand how a turbine works, either I have to use a kind of a
simulation
or a parallel, or send a person to a location, right? Similarly, if you look at the whole manufacturing sector, is still not yet manufactured or still not developed for that upstream downstream kind of a process. They are very much siloed with their work processes, right? Now there is a great opportunity of getting these two things together, right? It can be how do we solve the last mile failures? It can be how do we look at some of these? How do we free up and train our people? I think that's I don't know. I have never come across that as a big discussion point. But somehow we have kept these two sectors or two attempts at two parallel ones, right? So that's one great opportunity.
Sure, and that's thought because please.
The second other great opportunity I think GCC, all of us can and catch is the whole piece of data to actionable insights, which is again probably a subset of that knowledge which we need to bring.
Sure. And I think the first one gives at least us at KPMG a good idea to kind of facilitate perhaps a session like that, which connects the dots and pulls everyone together. In fact, the Enrich Forum is meant to do some of that, but thank you for that. Gautam, Pankaj, Marnix, any other thoughts on that?
I think, I mean, what Sudhir said, in addition to that, I think one area which I had alluded to earlier on in an earlier point is that if we really need to make a step change and a leapfrog in our innovation capability, I think that if there is one area where GCCs can come together is funding academia.
That's a great point.
Funding academia. And actually, if you think about it, the GCCs, considering the number of people that they employ, have an opportunity to leverage their leverage by almost probably creating alumni networks. Because if you look at a lot of other countries, a lot of funding and endowment funding which has come up, which then facilitates research, a lot of that comes through alumni.
Correct.
Right? There are certain alumni which are very active, but maybe within the GCCs, with the tiers of engineering colleges that we have, is there an idea there? Again, I'm thinking
sure, absolutely. And this was a little bit of blue sky thinking. So thank you.
So that's really where I would go.
Thank you for that. Pankaj, Marnix, any thoughts?
Well, personally, I think GCCs are part of the organizations that are part of, and it's the same question of how do organizations work together. I don't see them as those as disjunct. There's a certain natural flow of rotation, especially in cities like Manila or Chennai, where one GCC employee goes to the next, so you have that. And I think, say, digital twins and digital assets will at some point, I can't exactly see how, but help GCCs be more part of the real world. But at the end of the day, it's just the same question as how companies can work more together. A lot is happening. Traditionally we're always joint ventures, but you see more and more driven by technology, and at a higher pace because things can go so much quicker these days.
Sure. Thank you. And I'm conscious of time. We do need to wrap up. So I'm going to, in a real rapid fire format, and would request for you all to give me your very quick one-line responses. And these are really two last questions. The first one being, given the environment you're working in, if you had one expectation from the government or the regulator, what would that be that would further enable this global capability center ecosystem and the environment you're in? Gautam?
Certainty.
Sorry?
Certainty.
Certainty. Okay. That's truly rapid fire response. Sudhir?
I would say some of the changes we have done to enable work from home.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether they are going to, kind of stay put or there will be a change. I think that needs to be relooked, definitely.
And you'd like it to stay put?
I would like it to stay put. I think it's
Sure.
a good
It's a
advantage
great
of having a dual model. Yeah.
Absolutely. Pankaj?
Yeah, I would say, I think the policy making and I think could be more around developing some platforms where GCCs can come on variety of topics, right? I think that would be a big boon and need of the hour. Right?
Sure, and I think the industry can enable getting that together. Marnix, any thoughts from you?
I think one area where I hope governments will work together and support is, say, global COVID vaccination. I can see many disparities coming up in that, who goes first, etc. But if one thing helps, then it's, a selfless, coordinated approach to get us out of this COVID mess.
Sure, thank you.
Very true.
And coming to my second rapid fire question, because it's got to do, we've spoken so much about technology driving the future and being at the heart of it. We've touched upon how GCCs have proven resilience like never before through 8 months. And yet there is one scary thought with being so driven by technology. What about the risks? And when one looks at the risks element, there was a story about how one power plant at some point shut down because of a cyber attack and on the controls over there. So linked to the theme of risk, if there is one risk that keeps you awake at night from a GCC model perspective, what would that be? And in whichever order you want to go, but a rapid response, please.
Talent for me.
Okay. Sudhir?
Okay, I think for me it is more to do with how do I sustain that whole culture which we can develop while you are all together versus when there is a dual mix.
Okay.
I think that's a very important component.
Sure. Pankaj?
I feel like, this is the changing time and there would be change of the parent company, right? How quickly we can understand and adapt to that, right? And especially at this point of time, a lot of us are working remotely. How can we ensure the right motivation and well-being of the employees? So I think those are the two things I would say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Marnix?
Insufficient diversity and inclusion, because this all works to people working, collaborating globally, whereas, from an evolutionary point of view, humans have not been equipped to stimulate or embrace diverse characters. You're on guard for things that look different. So the risk is that people might fall back into that with, you see in politically how that plays out sometimes.
Thank you. And interestingly, from where I'm seeing it, I have all of the engineer and technical heads, but everyone's talking about the workforce of the future in some form or fashion. And it's got to do with the softer aspect of what enables our model. So at one level, it's reassuring because it tells me that technology is well taken care of and one is cognizant and working on addressing those risks appropriately. It is these elements that keeps you awake. But thank you again for those responses. And gentlemen, with that, we're going to bring the session to a wrap. So appreciate your time, your inputs. We've gone over several aspects of this model, each of you bringing in some very rich examples of how you are leveraging the model and technology to really innovate and drive what's absolutely core to your businesses. So for international oil and gas majors, some of what you're doing is fantastic. And we've touched upon the model itself. We've spoken about themes of collaboration, how the remote working environment is changing. We've touched upon a few interesting aspects. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers are going to have a bunch of takeaways. We certainly, if we are to project and look into the crystal ball and look at the model in 2025, I can bet you it's going to look very different. As each of you continues to innovate and drive this future model as it becomes more seamless, the concept of onshore, offshore, even in the oil and gas parlance, not referring to that, but it's soon to disappear. So this has been a fantastic session, a lot of takeaways, learnings for me, and we look forward to working with all of you, building that platform, some of those collaborative models that we spoke about. Thank you yet again for your time, and may your tribe grow in this whole innovation game. Thank you so much.
And
Thank
thanks,
you.
Nalini
Thank you.
and KPMG
Thank
for
you so
setting
much.
it up.
Pleasure
Thank you
joining.
so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
I hope you all enjoyed the interesting conversations over the